I'm Ivonne Hamoud, registered social worker and owner of New Moon Counseling. But out of the office, I'm a mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. Join me each week as I sit with a special guest to discuss everyday things that impact our mental health. We'll be chatting about everything from mental health and relationships to media and current events, as well as personal experiences and reflections, all in the hopes of normalizing our humanness and helping you see that you're not alone. This is Outside the Therapy Room. Hi everyone, welcome back to Outside the Therapy Room. Happy New Year, welcome to 2025. How was your break?
Good, yeah.
Yeah, mine was great.
So today we are joined by Jordan and Sarah, and we are going to be talking about exercise and the impact that exercise can have on our mental health. And I thought it would be a great topic for today because of it being the new year. We talk a lot about resolutions, and there's so many ads on the radio and on the TV about like exercise, because that tends to be a big thing that comes up in the new year for resolutions. And I think we talked about it, Jordan, in our other episode where we talked about how the gyms are full come January, but then usually around February things are dying down a little bit. But why is exercise such a huge focus in the new year, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think there's probably people like having the reset, right, of the new year. Let's like, now I'm going to get started. And then I think, you know, I notice even family gatherings, like people are always talking about, you know, things like, okay, yeah, I got to get back to healthy eating, lose some of the weight that I gained in the holidays or whatever, right? So there's just a lot of people are just talking about it and thinking about it. It's kind of I think we as humans have a tendency to like want to compensate. So if we're eating a lot over the holidays, then we think we should be exercising in the New Year's. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the problematic things that can kind of come up with thinking about it in that way. But
yeah. What about you, Sarah?
I think that it has a lot to do with people needing to start something new, like on a Monday or the new year. So oftentimes I find that folks will like kind of put off their goals or whatnot until like I'll start my diet on Monday, I'll start my exercise routine on Monday. And I feel like the new year is a new opportunity to start what they haven't been able to accomplish previously.
It's like Jordan said, kind of a reset, a fresh start. Sometimes gets us going. And I mean, what's a better fresh start than the first year or the first day of a new year?
Yeah. I mean, it's also like a lot of people are really busy in December, right? And it's maybe not feasible to be getting to the gym much then. And I don't know about everyone else, but January and February are typically very slow months socially and that sort of thing. So that, maybe it's just easier to fit in for people then too. But I like, Sarah, what you said about the opportunity, right? Like we can think of it as an opportunity, but we can also treat it as now we're putting all this pressure on ourselves. Or we're delaying something that we could get to sooner if we weren't so fixated on there being this kind of clean new start or whatever.
Yeah, I know for me, exercise is really important and beneficial for my mental health. It helps my mood. It helps me be able to tackle all of the things that I have to do. And it just kind of gives me a good kind of baseline to focus on myself. When I'm there for my, 30 to 40 minute workout, I'm present, I'm focusing on myself. I feel more grounded. But I will agree that during I guess middle of October and through the holidays until the end of December, I usually tend to drop my exercise routine because I'm just so overwhelmed with everything else that's going on. Right? Like there's Halloween, and then my kiddo has a birthday in November, and then all of the events, like literally our weekends were all booked up right up until Christmas. And it's really hard to kind of put the energy to kind of have the motivation to do a workout when I have to bake and I have to wrap presents and I have to go to the mall and I have to do all of these things. Or I just want to sit down. I'm so exhausted. I just want to watch a Christmas movie and not think about anything. And so I find for me, sometimes January is a nice reset, but I agree with what you mentioned, Jordan, that sometimes it's that reset because now things are done. Now I have an opportunity to kind of do the exercising and get back to that regular routine again.
Yeah, I definitely find life is just back to more normal routine at the beginning of January after a crazy December a lot of the time for other things too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, like I rely on exercise so much for my mental health. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge outlet for me, especially with my like anxiety or stress.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a place where I can be present, which doesn't happen often during the day. Like if I'm at work or if I'm doing schoolwork, so I guess it's easier for me to continue to incorporate it in my day, even if it's just a walk. Yeah, because I guess I really depend on it or I lean on it as like a tool for
Yeah.
my mental health.
For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good place to start is why is exercise beneficial to our mental health?
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind for me, and I'm the same way. Like I recently had a really stressful day, and I remember planning on going to the gym at the after the most stressful part of the day because I'm like I know I want to go and just kind of get some of this stress out.
Mm.
One of the big things that stands out to me is even just physiologically when we're stressed, our body is releasing all sorts of chemicals and hormones that are associated with like accessing energy, right? Like stress means in our past as a species, stress means we gotta move, right? We gotta fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
And so what often happens nowadays is we get stressed and those same chemicals are still being released, but then the stressors that we're dealing with don't have anything to do with physical activity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually like you're using those chemicals for what they're meant for, and it actually like puts them to positive use if you are able to exercise. So I often tell people that exercise is probably one of the most reliable stress reducers that I think we know about.
Mm-hmm. That's why exercise too can be so helpful when we're experiencing anxiety or about to get to a panic attack because
Yeah.
our body's like what's happening, we're feeling our heart racing or we're feeling we have a shortness of breath, we're feeling all of these things, but it's hard to connect it to something physical because we might not actually be doing anything physical.
Totally.
And so one of the tips that I give to my clients is actually the acronym tip, like, temperature and then increase movement, like do something, do jumping jacks, do anything, any kind of movement so that your nervous system's able to kind of reset and be like, oh, wait, there's a reason why we're sweating or it's hard for us to breathe. It's because it is, now we're moving our body, now we're doing something. And I think like Sarah said, even just going for a walk, and maybe this is something we can talk about a little bit after, but like that can be a grounding moment as well because you're focused on your walk. You might be going for a walk outside. So then you're getting fresh air, you're getting to be in like outdoors, and that alone is beneficial for us. So
For sure.
yeah.
I agree with you, like with what you said about the grounding, because oftentimes if I'm out for a walk, it's usually in nature, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
being more aware of my present moment, of looking around, of taking in the scenery that I have. I'm usually also with my dogs, so that also makes me happy.
Yeah.
And then if I'm at the gym, I'm also present. Like I feel like that's the only place that I go where I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
focused on lifting, or if I'm on the treadmill, I'm not thinking about my job or my evening or anything else I have to do. I'm just in
Yeah.
the moment. And for me, that can be really helpful. And then
Yeah.
I think also it does, I feel like I get a lot of like energy that's built up
Mm.
that I need to release. And then after I go to the gym or go for a walk, I'm usually, not, that's gone mostly.
Yeah, kind of like you mentioned, putting your workout at the end of an event that you knew was going to be quite stressful. So
Yeah.
you had an opportunity to kind of, get that energy out.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, like our emotions and our mental health is very physiological. Like it exists in our body. And so having that opportunity to focus and use our body through movement, and whether that's like going to the gym or going for a walk, going for a run, doing yoga, Pilates, like even gentle stretching can be so beneficial for us.
It can be social too, right? When I'm at the gym, I'm not really interacting much with other people, but I kind of like that I'm in my own world, but there's other people around. And when I take my dog for a walk in the morning, lately my daughter has been really excited about coming with me in the morning, which she didn't used to do, and so that makes me really happy that she wants to join in for that. So walking, it can be a great time to be alone with your thoughts or alone with a podcast or something like that. And it can also be an opportunity for social connection too, which I think is another one of the big benefits there with exercise for sure.
I think it's great, like the social aspect to it as well. Because I'm often like, if I walk, I'm usually with my sister, my husband, and yeah, it's just a nice way to interact and unwind.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a little bit about all these different sorts of exercises, and I think sometimes people can be really hard on themselves where they think an exercise is like strength training and lifting all these weights and doing all of this work, or, doing a really intense cardio exercise, and it can be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, as we just pointed out, it can also be smaller ways that we can practice any kind of body movement, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's taking, your pets for a walk or just going for a quick walk around the block. Like, anything can kind of be exercise. Why do you think there's so much focus though on like the big, like, real cardio workout? You need to be like drenched in sweat. You need to be lifting
Yeah.
all of these pounds. Like,
I think it fits people's stereotype of what exercise is, right? Like, so it's just easier for people to think of that as exercise, even though, like you're saying, there is a lot of other things that it could be. And then there's all sorts of stuff with social media that I'm sure we'll get into
oh
where
yeah.
that can be the focus. And I think there's maybe like for the people who are into that sort of thing, there can be almost like a point of pride. It's just like I'm doing the real thing here, right? Like and then that can kind of make everyone else feel like that's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
But in reality, I think we actually have a lot of research now showing that the bar for like where you get even just like tremendous benefits from exercise is so much lower than people assume. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to add to that, especially as a woman who is, I feel like everyone is influenced by society, social media, and what society deems as attractive or beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes folks can slip into that mindset where if you want to lose weight or like I guess I feel like if you're doing like really hard cardio or lifting weights or whatnot, perhaps your focus is more on what you look like rather than how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that folks can slip into like having to do really heavy training or a lot of cardio, like long stretches of cardio, which actually end up being more detrimental to your health and your physiology than doing workouts that are more suited for your body type, your metabolism, your schedule. Yeah, so I think that there's just this misconception about what type of exercise needs to be done in order to have different results. But I think like we're shifting now into, Pilates and yoga, mindfulness, breathing, like breath work is becoming much more popular.
Mm-hmm.
I think because we're realizing that these are also really effective tools for overall health. I think that, we, society, is looking more at holistic health rather than trying to look a certain way. So I think that, like our exercise or our view or understanding of exercise is also shifting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too comes from social media. Like, it's gaining popularity because people are posting about it. And, that can, in some cases, be beneficial for us to learn something new or a new kind of exercise routine or whatever it could be. But on the other hand, it can also be damaging because, as you mentioned, Jordan, we can go to comparison.
Mm-hmm.
We can see a person's body, or there's a lot of like very aggressive kind of like, if you look this way you need to, like, on social media, and it's like, that's not nice. Kind of like scroll past, but it's hard to not listen to what those kinds, like those people or those influencers are saying. But there definitely is a lot of you get both, right? You get like, hey, look, this is an exercise, take it easy, do something that you enjoy, even if it's 20 minutes. If that's the only time that you get, like, take it. And then there's others that are like, no, you need to do this, and you need, like, just very polarizing views on social media, which that is what social media is with a lot of different issues. But
I get a lot of ads on TikTok of women who are in really great shape, and they're like, hey, join me for the next 6 weeks, you'll get shredded, you'll be this, you'll be that. And I think that a lot of people, maybe only women, more women, fall into this trap of, oh, if I just do what they're doing, I can look the way that they look.
yeah.
And that is I just find that so frustrating, and it's such a misconception because no one takes into consideration that every body is different, every
Mm,
set point is different,
yeah.
everybody's metabolism and physiology are different.
Hmm.
So if I follow someone else's diet or workout regime, I'm not going to look the way that they do, and my body is not going to react the way that
Mm,
theirs did to the exact same exercises. So
right.
I just feel like it's not very productive to follow what is going on social media when it's not tailored to like your specific needs.
Yeah. And now we're getting into like, the importance of exercise, but the dangers
Yeah.
of how we approach exercise. Because I think in general,
Hmm.
exercise can be quite helpful and
Hmm.
beneficial, as we've just pointed out. But our approach or our view, our purpose, our
Hmm.
goal towards exercise can be, again, depending on how we're
Hmm.
doing it, can be harmful.
Hmm.
Um, when I was in university, I'm pretty sure it was an eating disorder, distorted
Hmm.
view of eating or whatever. But I was eating 500 calories in a day,
Oh
and
my
then I
gosh.
would do the crazy DVD P90X
Oh
workouts.
wow.
And sometimes I would do two times, like that same DVD
Hmm.
2 times. And yes, I lost weight, but that was not healthy for me. I think I
No.
was getting
Yeah.
lightheaded at the end of workouts because I wasn't eating well.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of the focus. I don't know if you guys remember the P90X
Yeah.
videos, like,
Yeah.
but like a friend had downloaded it and it was really, really hard. And I
Yeah.
had family to be like, okay, you need to throw that thing out.
Yeah.
Like, you're so focused on it. And
Yeah.
the exercise piece was beneficial, but I was misusing it.
Mm.
I was not doing it in a way that
Hmm.
actually worked for me or for my body. And the focus was to lose weight, not to gain muscle or to be stronger.
Hmm.
And so the view that I had going into it was just not a good one. And it didn't last.
Yeah.
It didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had a support system that were like, nope, done. Like, don't do this anymore. And I was able to kind of get back into a healthier place. But
Yeah.
yeah, there was, again, what is it? Where it's like on TV and it's like, get these discs, like get
Oh.
these DVDs.
Like
What is that called?
infomercial?
Yes, infomercials. That's what it was. But
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, they get you sometimes. And now
Yeah.
with social media, Sarah, as you mentioned, yeah, you need to take all of those things into perspective. Like,
Yeah.
we all come in different shapes and sizes, and it's not a one size fits all
Hmm.
view for exercise.
Yeah, and there's also there's a huge issue now, which this would be a whole other topic, but like in terms of do what I do and you'll look like I look on social media, there's also the issue too that a lot of people are who are in the fitness industry are, using drugs basically to
Yeah.
look how they look,
Yeah.
and they're not advertising that part, right? So people taking steroids or different things like that can really distort your view of what you're supposed to look like if you go to the gym or all these sorts of things. So there is a lot of
Mhm.
danger with looking at exercise social media. There's also, I think, a lot of great stuff on social media where people get inspired and
Mhm.
learn helpful information and those sorts of things. But as with everything on social media, there's a lot of garbage that you
Mhm.
have to sift through as
Filter,
well,
yeah.
right? But Yvonne, you said something really important, which was like, when you were in that state with the really reduced calories and crazy exercise, like your family making like bringing things up there. I think that's really important. I was going to say one of the ways that we can pay attention to how exercise is affecting our mental health positively or negatively is kind of checking in with ourselves and
Yeah.
asking why are we doing it. But I think often when you're in it, you're so wrapped up in it that you actually need sometimes a friend, a family member,
Mhm.
someone else to kind of speak to you about it and let you know what they're seeing. Chances are, if other people are noticing that the things about your exercise or nutrition or whatever that seem unhealthy, like, I mean, it's not like you have to do exactly what they're telling you to do, but you should
Mhm.
definitely take that into account if other people are noticing things. Because,
Yeah.
yes, certainly I think the people around us will notice things about us that sometimes we're not noticing if we get really fixated on a certain goal or something like that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
And it was you need to eat.
Yeah.
Like, sit down and you need to eat, and having that. So it was great. And
Yeah.
thankfully, I feel glad that it didn't last that long.
Mm-hmm.
It was I think all in all, it was in a month, but there
Mm-hmm.
are individuals where it is an ongoing thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
having that support system is definitely important.
Yeah, I can also relate to what both of you just shared. I started struggling with my eating when I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of developed into like a full blown eating disorder. And then around 17, I joined a gym to burn more calories.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, eating 500 calories a day is too much. So, and when I joined the gym, there was a woman there that worked there, and I guess I got to know her a little bit, but I think she was concerned, but rather than expressing concern, she showed me a photo of, I guess it was a female bodybuilder at the time, but this is when they weren't, like they didn't have a lot of muscle.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, "Do you like the way that this woman looks?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, then you need to start eating."
Mm-hmm.
So from there, it just shifted my disordered eating into more disordered eating because I still was restricting,
Mm-hmm.
but in order to like build muscle or to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And then I got involved in the fitness industry, so my disordered eating and restriction, it just continued for like the majority of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think today I'm better, but I am definitely, like tying exercise into this. Like I wear an Apple Watch and I have like if anybody has an Apple Watch, you have rings that you have to close every day. And I am like super focused on closing those rings.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that will like become priority over other things. And for me, like I recognize that that's not healthy and it's something that I, want to change. But just to acknowledge that disordered eating and activity can be a lifelong struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Like sometimes that's the way that things are. And I think having awareness is really helpful. But yeah, that it can be like an ongoing struggle for sure.
Yeah, and like again, we're going into eating disorders, and that's a topic all on its own that hopefully one day will be an episode that we discuss further.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, again, it's the fixation with the exercise piece.
Yeah.
And so, yes, exercise can definitely be beneficial for our mental health, but what do we do
Mm-hmm.
when we have had that fixation that we need to exercise this much and it needs to look this way and for
Mm-hmm.
this long? Like, how can we then see exercise and use exercise in a way that is healthy
Mm-hmm.
and beneficial to our body instead of just like this thing that is going to help us lose weight?
I think for me, what happened is that I started loving myself more. That my worth was no longer in my external appearance, that I could see worth and value in myself, like as who I am in my identity.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started loving myself more, I just started treating myself better. Because when you love someone, you treat them well. And the same goes for us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I started like caring about myself. And now, what I do is, I feel like I take care of my body, but I feel there's always room for improvement,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, for me, it was the all or nothing. I had to really cut off the black and white all or nothing thinking
Mm-hmm.
and try to see the gray. I would be really hard on myself to make sure that I'm doing my workouts every day and that it looks a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wouldn't get it, I would be like, okay, then I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point? I can't even like keep up with this. And for me, it was, and I think I mentioned it in our episode, Jordan, but like I really had to look at the gray area and be like, I couldn't exercise that day. I was very busy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. I can
Yeah.
pick it up again the next day, and actively trying to pick it up the next day and do like slowly ease back into it and
Mm-hmm.
being patient with myself and compassionate and saying like, I did a 20-minute workout, but that's more than what I did yesterday. And I feel great and my body feels good and my mind feels good. And I
Yeah.
feel a little bit more relaxed and ready to take on the day. So it was kind of like a mental shift that I had to do to kind of have a different relationship with exercise than I had previously.
Yeah. Yeah. The black and white thinking thing or all or nothing thinking, right? So I don't know if people are familiar with this concept. It's like, it's either 100% or it might as well be zero, right? Like
Yeah.
I either did it exactly how I wanted, or there was no point in doing it, that's like probably a really good rule of thumb here for whether you have a healthy relationship with this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you're being really black and white about it, you should ask yourself whether this is really like your current approach to exercise and whatever else is actually healthy. Because if it doesn't have flexibility, then I would hazard a guess that it's probably not very healthy for you. Obviously, we can never speak in absolutes, but this one I'm actually pretty confident in. If you're being black and white about exercise like that, it may not be helping you the way you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like that, Jordan, the notion of flexibility, because that, again, I think, and Yvonne, you touched on this too, we're taking into consideration our bodies, how our bodies feel, what our bodies are asking of us, and we're being mindful of, intuitively of what our bodies are asking us to do or to not do. So, one day I might have a plan to go to the gym, but if I'm tired or if I'm sore that day, I'll go for a walk instead, or I'll do some yoga or Pilates. So there is flexibility, or there can be flexibility. We don't always have to be so rigid in, like the rules that we've created for ourselves about what exercise actually looks like.
Mm-hmm. I think on the other spectrum, you mentioned like, steroids and drugs to get muscles. And I think a lot of the time that's more kind of focused for men. I'm going to make a generalization, might not be true. There may be, women and other folks that are focusing in on that too. But I think, with the men in my life, that has definitely been a thing where, men experience body image issues and low self-esteem. And when they're seeing, these really buff guys on like TikTok or social media or TV or wherever, you hear about their workout regime, but you don't know what's happening behind closed doors, right? And so I know for the guys in my life, it's been like, I want to be this strong. I want to have my biceps to look like this, and I want to have abs, and I want to have pecs, and I want to do all of these things. And that's wonderful. Go for it. But again, that realization, your body is not their body. Your body's not going to be able to perform or to look the way that this person's body looks like, because we don't know what's actually happening. And how they got there, but also bodies are just naturally going to look very different.
Yeah, I actually like what you said there too. I mean, fully agree with all the, like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, right? And like, there are multiple problems I see that come up with that sort of thing. So on one hand, you have people who don't talk about the fact that they're using steroids, and then they give people an unrealistic expectation of what they could achieve with just diet and exercise or whatever. And then you have people who do talk about it and they glorify it, and then people go, "Oh, that's the answer. I just need to go on steroids," and that's also a problem. So. If someone's like honest about it, but not honest about like the downsides, that's not great either. But I do like what you said about like, it's, go for it. If you want to look a certain way, like, that's not inherently problematic. Like, I think that like it's totally legit to have like part of the motivation to be like, oh, I want to look better, whatever that means, right? Like, better is a pretty subjective term here, obviously. But I think going back to something you said before, Sarah, it's like, are you only going to love yourself if you look a certain way? Then you might be telling yourself, oh, it's part of it. But if your loving yourself depends on how you look, then you probably have some other work in other areas of your life that you should be focusing on instead. Because if you don't love yourself now, you're not going to love yourself more when you look like that, Instagram or TikTok influencer or whatever, right? Like, it's just not how it works. You're just going to create probably more problems for yourself going down that route.
Yeah, Jordan, I thought that what you said about, loving yourself regardless of what you look like is really, really important. And that's something that I struggled with for a long time, because I did have other like self-esteem, self-worth issues to work through. And then once I did, I was able to come to terms with the fact that this is my body, this is how it looks, it's healthy, I'm healthy, I'm happy. And that no matter, like, even if I try to change it or lose weight or get toned or whatever, do excessive amounts of exercise, it's not going to make me any happier about who I am as a person. So I was able to separate like my body from who I am as a person. like from my identity,
Mm-hmm.
because your body is not your identity.
Mm-hmm.
I
It's a
think,
part of it, but yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of the times what I've heard both like in the therapy room and also something I have said in my life
Mm.
has been like, when I look this way, everything's going to be better. Right?
Yeah.
Like when I get down to this size or when I exercise more, when I do all of these things, I'm going to like everything's going to be more wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, first of all, not the healthiest way to view change or life, and also not realistic because, Jordan, as you pointed out, you could do all of that, but you might still not feel happy. You might still
Yeah.
not, things aren't all of a sudden just going to work themselves out and be better.
Yeah.
And I think, again, with exercise, it can be such a difficult place if you have had those thoughts before, if you have had like that focus on your body, or, you know, I think for women, you know, maybe for men too, but I think for women too, we hear it from our we've witnessed or observed our mothers talking negatively about their bodies, and
Yeah.
people, other women around us talking negatively about our bodies or exercise, or, you know, comments made over the holidays. Like me and Bethany talked about that too, how to set boundaries with people saying like, oh, I'm gonna have to do a big workout after this meal. And I'm sure we've heard it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, through the holidays, and it's so hard to get to a healthy view of what its purpose is for you. And for me, it's been, my purpose with exercise isn't going to be to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, cool.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be my priority. My priority is using exercise as a tool to benefit my mental health, to help me be able to regulate my emotions, to give me time to prioritize myself.
Yeah.
And my lifestyle change so that I'm able to be active with two very busy boys, be able to chase them without getting winded, right?
Yeah.
Like that's my goal, that's my priority. And to get stronger. My kids, even though they're older, for some reason sometimes still like to be lifted and carried, and I need to, you know, work on my strength and my posture to be able to do that without hurting myself or dropping them.
Yeah.
But I think for me it's kind of been that like opportunity to just really reflect, like, what is my purpose with using exercise now, and trying to get away from the weight loss.
Yeah.
That I also have shifted over the past few years. I think like as I get older, I'm more focused on my mental health for sure, and how exercise can positively impact my mental health and make me feel better. Have you ever done a dance workout? You really need
Like
to do
Zumba?
a dance workout.
I've done Zumba.
Well, like,
oh.
yeah, I do it on Apple Fitness, but
Oh.
dancing makes me so happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I was so like regimented with just the gym, I would miss out on other activities that I really enjoy.
Yeah. And dancing's such a great way. Like, it's so beneficial for our mental health too.
Yeah. But now, like, my focus, like, besides my mental health, is really like longevity, like staying flexible, mobility.
Yeah.
You know, still being able to sit and lift and bend and whatnot as I age, because I think that's really important to enjoy. You know, as you age, to be able to get out and do the things that you enjoy, rather than, you know, having a body that doesn't work the way that you want it to.
Yeah. I think having those clear ideas of why I'm doing it that go beyond the how you look is probably, honestly, for most people, will lead to a more sustainable relationship with exercise. Like, you will probably exercise more throughout the rest of your life if you approach it in these ways than if you try to, like, sprint toward having some sort of idealized appearance and then burning yourself out, right? Like, there's probably a lot of people who've gotten into it for that reason and then totally burnt out on exercise and given up on it later. So I do think having a clear idea of why you're doing it that connects to your like big picture values in life, right? I think we talked about this with in the goals episode too, right? Like, having an idea of, like, how does this fit into what actually matters to me in life? And if, like, your appearance kind of fits into, like, your big picture values, that might be something that you want to reflect on, right? But like if you thinking about like being able to lift your kids and play with your kids, or being able to be mobile and later stages of life, like that's a big part of it for me too, right? Like I want to get to, when I'm older, and I want to be able to travel still, right? Like I wouldn't want to be in a place where I didn't exercise much, and then I get to like retirement or whatever that stage of life is, and not be able to go and do all those sorts of things. Yeah, so for sure, I think having a clear idea of why, and making sure that why actually lines up with things that really matter to you in the big picture of your life is huge.
Yeah. And I think also being mindful of what you're using to measure, because it's okay for us to have goals. And with exercise and with our talk about body image, I want to normalize that if you do have a goal to lose some weight, or, that's fine, and that can be done in a healthy way. That,
for sure,
like you said, is actually sustainable and manageable and maintains, like, all of those things. There's been so much research on diet culture, and it's so temporary.
Yeah.
We quit, and then we've gained all the way back up. So I mean, if that is something that that is your goal for this year, then that's amazing. But there are other ways that you can go about measuring, so that we're not so fixated on the number on the scale, right? So like for me, something that I do to measure is I really enjoy strength training.
Right.
So when I notice that I can bench press a little bit more, or when I've been bench pressing like 40 pounds or whatever, like that, all of a sudden I'm like, this is easy, I can add 5 more pounds, right? Like then that to me is like, wow, things are changing, that's great. And another way that I measure like things with exercise is also how my body is feeling. I don't know about you guys, but I really like the hurt after a workout.
I do too.
Okay, good. It's just, I'm like, ooh, my muscles are hurting. That means I did something.
Yeah,
like that means I worked out this part of my body. It's, showing me now. Because it can feel so hard when you're in the moment. You're like, is this even doing anything? And then, it's like the next day you can't walk. So it feels really good, but that also helps me, see if like that measurement that like, oh, okay, this is working. My body is benefiting from this, and my mental health as well. My family knows when I haven't been like practicing self-care. Not I haven't been exercising. It's exercise has been part of my self-care, and so when I'm not practicing that, my family can tell that I might be a little bit more short, I may be a little bit more irritated, and it's not necessarily that like you have to go exercise, Yvonne, you have to go do that. It's not that. It's, hey, are you good? Like, maybe you need to practice self-care in whatever my little self-care toolbox looks like. That exercise is also in there. Another measurement for me is these stairs at our office. Sometimes I get really winded by the time I'm up. And when I'm not, and I know I've been putting in that work to kind of build my, stamina?
Yeah.
It's your VO2 max.
Yeah. Then I'm like, I get up there and I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm not as winded as I was a few weeks ago. Yeah. So I think like having those more functional goals and being able to like have that as a measurement of success, like quote unquote success that I'm doing, is going to be more helpful than the number on the scale, because the number on the scale might not move. The number might be the same, but my body looks different. My clothes might fit a little bit better. I'm feeling generally really good about myself. But if I'm only focused on the number of the scale, that's going to make me feel like shit, right? So being able to have like other methods of measure.
Yeah, I'm right now. So I've been lifting weights since I was like 17, which is a long time ago. But I also love it when the numbers go up at the gym, like when you're like, oh, I'm stronger.
Yeah.
But something that I've been focusing on lately is my VO2 max, so my body's capacity to use oxygen when I'm working out. Because I feel like it can be really easy to focus on like just one thing. So for me, it's been weight. Long and without cardio. So again, I approach this like holistically, and I want my whole body to be healthy.
Yeah.
And for me, that looks like having a healthy heart and healthy cardiovascular system as well. So, and that was the other thing when you mentioned about, how your body feels, that perhaps folks who are really focused on the scale or the mirror need to reflect on their their conception of health.
Mm,
What
for
does
sure.
health actually look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you healthy because you're thin? Are you healthy because you lose 20 pounds? Or are you healthy because your mental health is better? You're not as stressed, you're not as angry. You can walk up the stairs more quickly, you're stronger in the gym. So, yeah, that's another thing that I think can be important to conceptualize when we talk about exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely am someone who likes seeing the numbers go up too, like numbers on the bar or whatever, right? Like it kind of, to me it's like kind of a gamifying way of like, that's actually part of, especially early on, how I would get motivated to exercise is through like looking at numbers and those sorts of things. I guess that's, my brain is just wired for that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this is maybe a good time to bring up, like, finding something that works for you is important, right? Because I know that I love that sort of thing, and I love to kind of tweak things and try to optimize and all those sorts of things, and I get all nerdy about it. But I know, like, my wife is like, that sounds like way like that's crazy. She would much rather approach it in a much more casual
Yeah.
way, like go to a class, do something that involves other people, those sorts of things. So there's lots of different ways of approaching this, and finding the thing that works for you is probably the most important thing, because the fact that you're exercising matters so much more than what the specific thing that you're doing is. So if
Yeah.
you find the thing that you like, that's going to be probably better in the long term. But with that, I think it also is worth mentioning that sometimes you learn to love things too, right? So we talked about like enjoying feeling sore after a good
Mm-hmm.
workout or something like that. That probably wasn't true for me at the beginning,
Right.
right? Like I remember like it took some time of trying to like, I don't want to say make myself do it, because I found ways to still make it enjoyable, and that's where I would use things like habit stacking, which I think is another thing we talked about in the goals
Mm-hmm.
episode. So, watching a show or listening to a podcast or something like that while working out to kind of make it a more enjoyable activity. But eventually, I started to learn to love the actual exercise itself, and now it's something that I look forward to. So I kind of want to mention both of those things, because it's like, A, like, don't feel like you have to do what other people are doing. Find the
Yeah.
thing that works for you, and B, give some things a chance. You might actually learn to love them, but don't just keep forcing yourself to do it if you've given it a fair chance and are like, no, I can't stand like lifting weights at a gym or something like that.
Yeah. And I think, like you pointed out too, Sarah, there's so many different methods of exercise, like walks, dance, swimming. I have somebody that I know that does swim aerobics, and that is their happy time, and that is their workout. And when you enjoy it, I mean, like you said, you might not enjoy it in the beginning, but when you do enjoy it or find some fulfillment in it, there's more of a chance of you continuing it.
For sure.
And I think something that is, I'm going to invite people to do is also just do a quick check-in after you've moved your body in some way. Like, just to do a quick reflection on how are you feeling. A lot of the times, because our endorphins are released when we're doing exercises, we can feel a little bit more calm or happy or energized. So just do a quick little, it doesn't have to be a long full out meditation reflection. Just do a quick check-in, like, wow, I was feeling really grumpy coming into this exercise, and I'm leaving feeling really accomplished. My body feels really good. I'm ready to take on the day. I'm feeling a lot calmer. My heart is beating at a normal pace after my cool down, but I'm feeling like good.
Yeah.
And so having that reflection and the reason why it's important to have the moment of reflection is because you're more likely to remember that that's how you felt. Whereas we go to the gym and we're like, I don't want to go to the gym. And you don't remember that you feel so good afterwards, or after you go to the swimplex and you do your like swim aerobics, or you do dance, or you do whatever, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I think that's a great idea.
So we've mentioned a few things about exercise in this conversation and a lot about body image. And I think the body image piece definitely needs to be an episode at a later time so we can focus more time on it. But I think right now with exercise, what is a message that you want our listeners to kind of leave with?
Something we didn't touch on, but I think would be a good message to leave here with, would be also to remember that like with all forms of self-care, like, you deserve this, right? Like, I think sometimes people struggle to like make it a priority because they maybe don't feel like they deserve to be taken care of themselves. And so just,
Yeah.
I think that would be a good kind of note to end on too. Remember, like you deserve to feel good in your body, whatever that means to you, right? So
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a whole long thing. Like I know, as a mom, I'm busy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like sometimes it doesn't have to be a whole drive to the gym. You can do something with the kids around, do a couple jumping jacks, go for a walk, run around the park, jump on the trampoline, like yeah, trying to fit it in with however your life might look like.
Yeah, Google exercise snacks if you haven't heard of it. That's
Exercise
kind of what you're
snacks.
talking about there. It's just,
Ooh, we'll put it in the show notes.
yeah, squeezing in some little bouts of exercise throughout the day as opposed to making it a whole big gym session.
Sarah, what about you? Any last messages?
I think for me, it would be about, I want to say like checking expectations, but
Yeah.
also like being mindful or reflecting on where your drive to work out is coming from.
Yeah.
And if that aligns with who you are and your values and your beliefs for others and about yourself. I feel like sometimes we have such high expectations of ourselves that we would never place on other people.
Yeah.
For sure.
So just be mindful about
Yeah.
that.
The
Yeah, I love
expectation
that.
piece. Yeah. We can be really unrealistic with our expectations.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people are like, I need to be this shredded and this lean, but when they're looking at other people, it's like they're not. They actually don't even think that about other people, right? Like they're not looking at other people and go, "There's something wrong with how they look."
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
See yourself through other people's eyes.
that's right.
Which
Yeah.
is I want to also normalize that. Can be really challenging
Yeah,
to do.
for sure.
But yeah, just like be compassionate with yourself and just do a quick
Yeah.
check-in on those expectations so that you are able to build yourself up for success instead of having unrealistic expectations that are more likely to not end up following through on or
Yeah.
being really hard on ourselves if we can't.
Yeah, and maybe just one more quick thing to add in because we talked about the social media thing. If the people you're following on social media like kind of reinforce that really unhealthy view of these things, that like I think we've mentioned a few things here that it's like hopefully who you're watching, like regardless of how they look, if they're preaching some level of body positivity, right? Like that they're probably more, in my opinion, more trustworthy. Than if they're being black and white, then they're probably going to lead you into a black and white place.
Yeah, and I love how you said that because it's not that we're saying, don't listen to anybody on social media, but there could be a lot of really awesome workout ideas or like a couple of like circuits that you can do that like I know I've picked some of those up to try to involve them or include them in my exercise, but definitely make sure you're being mindful of the kind of content that you are absorbing.
For sure.
Because social media can be a great place to get that motivation and have new workouts and all of these new fun things to try, but it can also be a harmful place that can make us not feel so great or put those unrealistic expectations on us.
Yeah, for sure.
As you're entering this journey, be compassionate and kind to yourself. And this is our first episode of 2025. So we're excited to have more conversations this year. And make sure to follow us on Outside the Therapy Room Pod on TikTok and social media. And thank you guys so much for being here.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Outside the Therapy Room. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you reside in Ontario and are interested in working with one of our therapists, please visit our website in the show notes. If you reside outside of Ontario, a quick Google search or search through Psychology Today will help you find a therapist near you.